We're going to have a great hour and a half talking about trends. So I am Jill Friedman Fixler, and I am president and founder of the J.F. Fixler Group, located in Denver, Colorado. When my grandma Ann, who would be 112 if she were alive today, and my mother, who turned 80 years old today, in their world, there was a hierarchical system. So those volunteers that we talk about as being traditionalist volunteers, right, born before 1946, created hierarchy in how they volunteer. Only have to look at an auxiliary system to understand what hierarchy is. And baby boomers and the generations that follow Gen X and Gen Y don't like hierarchy. They don't want hierarchy in their work. They want to collaborate. They want to be your peer. They want to be on equal footing with you, your partner in what they're doing. And yet, a lot of our programs are built around hierarchy. So what does that mean we have to do differently now? So certainly technology is the bomb. It's everywhere, right? And I'm still hearing people say, but we work with seniors, and they're not on the internet. And they're the fastest adopters to the internet and Facebook because they want to communicate with their children and grandchildren. So we have to take some assumptions about who people are. Baby boomers and the generations that follow are technologically proficient, and they expect you to be. So if you sit in this room, as I do, as a digital immigrant, and we have had to learn technology in our life, and you're engaging digital natives, they expect you to be savvy in how you convene them in virtual space and real time, and what tools and technologies you use. So if you're not a digital native and you're having high anxiety about being a digital immigrant, we need to recruit volunteers to help us cross the digital divide. Certainly, unemployment has had a huge impact, dramatic impact, on who we're seeing as volunteers. How many people in this room are seeing an increase in unemployed volunteers over the last 3 years? Virtually everybody. And yet I still, when I travel the country, I hear people say to me, yeah, but they're not going to stay. These are very skilled people for the most part, and if they're over 50, they're going to be with you for 18 to 24 months on an average. So it is hard for them and difficult for them, but it's an opportunity for us to learn to mobilize skills and resources in a different way. So in the world that I grew up in when I was 10 and I started in nonprofits, and now you know how old I am, it was all about being staff-driven, and I call it the pendulum. So if you think about your organization 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years ago, there were no staff. They were all volunteer-driven organizations. And after World War II, there was this huge pendulum swing, right? Away from volunteer engagement to the staff-driven model where staff tell volunteers what to do, where to do it, when to do it, how to do it, and with whom to do it. And what we lost in that swing is stakeholder buy-in. So as we began to tell volunteers what to do instead of volunteers bubbling up ideas and being with us and traveling with us as we move through planning and development and growth for our organizations, they became consumers instead of stakeholders. And now, during our troubled times, during our challenging times, they can choose to be with us or not. And so one of the things we need to be thinking about is how we build heartier relationships with our volunteers as partners and collaborators rather than telling them what to do, when to do, and how to do it, so that they'll be there for us regardless of what happens in our external environment. Now we're talking about micro-volunteering. So there's a wonderful website, www.sparked.com. And spark.com is a place where you can post an immediate need for a professional skill. Someone goes on, they make the match with the skill, it takes hours. So we decided to blog about this on our blog at jffixler.com, and we thought, well, let's post something. So my colleague who helps me with my blogs is an executive director of a small faith-based organization, and she posted the need for a save-the-date flyer. 3 hours later, she had a person identified. The next day, she had the flyer. Somebody said, I can do that on my lunch hour. I'm a graphic designer. So we moved from episodic, meaning what? Occasionally, once in a while, to instantaneously being engaged in our organization. So we're seeing a profound shift, and many of the things that volunteers are asked to do are not relevant or important enough for people to invest the limited time they have in that activity. So let's look for a minute about where are you? And I'm going to give you a couple of tools today to identify where you are in the process. So the first piece of understanding where you are with innovation, where you are with opportunity in your organization, is to understand where you are in your nonprofit life cycle. So Susan Kinney-Stevens of Minneapolis, Minnesota, has written a wonderful book on nonprofit life cycles. And she describes the nonprofit life cycle for many nonprofits. And I just want to take you through this process for a minute. And then I want you to, in your mind, check where you are on this list. So you have an idea. So somebody like, let's say, Bill Gates has an idea. And he's going to create the personal computer. Some of us are old enough to remember when computers were the size of this room. And he says, I'm going to create a personal computer. How's he feeling? He's really excited. He's young. He dropped out of college. He is in his father's garage. He's got an idea. He's cooking. He's percolating. And then all of a sudden, he's joined by somebody. And he gets some startup money, and he's feeling really great, and there aren't any rules. They're making it up every minute as they go along. And there's energy, and there's excitement going on. And then they're growing. More people are giving their money. They're getting orders, and they're making up rules, but they change 4 times a day. And they're really getting better and bigger. And their goal, not Microsoft, but their goal is to become a mature organization. So I want you to think about the mature organizations that you know of in your world. No offense to anybody who's in the room, but GM, right? And in a mature organization, you'll notice that's the longest visit, the shortest visit up at the top of this bell curve. And it's all about protection, and it's all about preventing risk and being comfortable. And it's not as exciting, and it's maybe a little bit boring. And then the organization begins to decline either rapidly, like GM, or the appearance of rapidly, like GM, or slowly erodes over time till it becomes in name only and terminal. And you can turn your organization around. It's really hard. The bigger the organization, the longer its history, it's really hard to turn it around, but you can. So the model that I grew up with in my life was that every organization aspired to be the mature organization. Red Cross, United Way, Girl Scouts, all of whom are undergoing massive transformation as we speak. So that isn't the model that we want to aspire to anymore. The model that we want to aspire to is Google, Apple, where they never get to be mature. They're constantly cranking out new product and new innovation. So where are you with this? Where is your organization with this? In terms of creating opportunities for people to help you become more innovative, more relevant, more savvy. Where are you and your organization on this chart? I want you to really think about that. Because if you think that you are anywhere approaching mature or in decline, what a fabulous opportunity. I'm sorry you're there. But what a fabulous opportunity to engage volunteers in change now. Finally, it's about community building and abundance. That's the job I want. I want to be the person who does community building in my organization. And the person who gets to stay, even in the worst time of economic history since 1929, you want it, I'll find it, we'll cultivate it, it will happen, and you're going to feel really great about it. So that's what we're talking about today, is how do we innovate and create sustainable change that's ongoing, that people want to be a part of. What are the things we need to know? First of all, we have to stop being afraid. So many people say, well, what will my job be if we engage more volunteers? What if the volunteer screws up? What will happen to me? We have to embrace failure and understand that we learn as much from what we fail at as from what we succeed at, and invest. We need to become what John Senge says is a learning organization. An organization that's committed to learning what works and what works now and not worry about what's going to work 3 to 5 years from now, because who the heck knows? So we need to be savvy at being a learning organization, and we need to celebrate our willingness to experiment and depart from the known world. So how do we do that? Well, we become change agents, agents of change, people for whom we are not afraid to try different things in our work, and we become role models for other people making change in their work. And we do this not by becoming tomorrow the organization of change, and by quoting change and shouting change from the highest treetop. They will all run for the hills. There'll be no one left if we do that. Change starts in small and discrete ways. Change starts from incubation and percolation and experimentation and a willingness to take on risk. And we can lead for that in our departments. We do not need to ask permission to change our jobs. And the moral of this whole hour and a half that we've spent together is we have to be the change. Do it now. Take advantage of this great moment. Thank you so much for your time and attention today.